Welcome to episode 3 of Mask of the Slasher. I'm Josh, and this is my wife, Krista.
Hi! Today, we're going to talk about movie soundtracks, horror movie soundtracks specifically. We've had discussions when watching some older movies about how ridiculous some of the soundtracks really are. So we've compiled a short list of a couple albums that kind of stand out to us, bad and good. And we even decided to include a playlist on Spotify, which we will put the link below in the description. One of the most notable ones for us that is still comical to us to this day is Wicker Man.
Yes.
The original Wicker Man.
Not the Nicolas Cage one. The less said about that, the better.
Yes. Wicker Man came out in 1973. Well, the whole movie has a very interesting soundtrack of songs that you just kind of go, what am I listening to? And the one main song, though, is called Corn Rigs. And that's Josh's favorite.
I love it. The artist who made these songs, by the way, is called Magnet, and I don't really know much about them other than this soundtrack.
Yeah, there's not much. It's kind of a mystery to us.
Maybe somebody can fill us in the comments some more information about Magnet.
Yeah, because weird.
Yeah.
So, and it's basically just talking about the harvest.
Yeah, it's like a folk song, more or less.
And then there's the fun one in the bar with the barmaid, or it's
the innkeeper's daughter.
Yeah.
Speaking of the innkeeper's daughter, that's a song we need to talk about also. She's trying to seduce the lead character. She gets naked and starts dancing around and knocking on his door and sings a song that's pretty far out too. I mean, the whole soundtrack's really far out.
But she's not just knocking on his door, she's knocking on the walls.
Yes.
And just doing some weird gyrations.
Gyrating.
Yeah,
it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
It's almost a musical.
Yeah.
This movie, because there's so many folk songs and whatever.
Mm-hmm. And
if you've ever seen Midsummer, they definitely didn't carry over the fantastic music choices. But they definitely borrowed from Wicker Man to make Midsummer, which is fine with us because both movies are 2 thumbs up for us.
Absolutely. So. Absolutely.
The next one is Last House on the Left, that was made in 1972, so also the original movie. I think this was Wes Craven's first movie he created, and it's about a bunch of hooligans who come into town and come across 2 girls that were going to a concert. There's rape and murder and
it's
all that fun
quite a
stuff.
Violent movie for its time.
It's very violent, very graphic movie, very shocking.
Yes.
But the main character in the movie, played by David Hess, he is also the composer for these songs in Last House on the Left. And there's one in particular that is just like, what were you thinking? And it's so inappropriately upbeat and happy.
Yes.
It's more of like a, hey, we're going to go to the store and have fun in the produce section kind of a song. And instead it's called the Baddies theme, like as in the bad guys, the Baddies theme. And it is just a little bit much. It's a little bit much.
Something I kind of wondered when we were talking about this, both Wicker Man and Last House on the Left have these very sort of upbeat soundtracks. And I wonder if it was kind of, I've never really read any interviews or anything about the making, so I just wonder if it was kind of a juxtaposition of, we're going to show these atrocious things happen, but have this really upbeat soundtrack to go along with it,
Yeah, because it's not like it was unheard of to have downtrodden, just sad, spooky songs back then.
Right, I mean, even though.
But David Hess he's quite the character in real life as well. I did get the chance to meet him back at a Fangoria convention in, 2002, 2003, something like that. A friend of mine at the time, he was interviewing him for his podcast this is when podcasts were new-ish back then. And so we were in a hotel room just talking to him, and he was really kind of cool, whatever, but he definitely had some energy about him that was just like, it was kind of weird. But if I had known then what I know now, I would have been like, why? So those two right there, they stand out as the bad ones. As the, not so bad they're good.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're not necessarily bad per se. They're just it's just if you come to those movies later on and you're used to horror soundtracks being a certain way,
yes,
you'll come across those two movies in particular, I think, and just be like, "What the hell is this?" You know,
yeah, exactly.
Because it's just not at all what you're used to. If you grew up on like 80s horror, you grow up on 80s horror and then you go back to the 70s, it's
jarring.
Kind of a shock to the system, I think.
And I do want to clear something up. We are talking about soundtracks and not scores.
Right.
I personally love both of them very, very much, and we will probably talk about scores at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
But we're just talking about soundtracks for now. And growing up and watching a lot of horror through the 80s and 90s, it really kind of blew up with soundtracks that you would want to go and purchase because the compilations were so good.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for music that we liked. These are albums and stuff that we listened to growing up because they happened to be part of a soundtrack, and it was just like, oh, this is a good compilation, and you got to learn about some music you may not have listened to otherwise.
Right.
As I was thinking about all of this, aside from the two we originally mentioned,
mm-hmm.
Scream.
Oh yeah.
The soundtrack for Scream was a big one for me.
For sure.
Because Red Right Hand is on it.
Right.
And not to say that I went and listened to Nick Cave a lot after that, but it was a little eye-opening.
Yeah.
Just to have a different variety of music. And I still listen to that soundtrack to this day, even though it's kind of a lot of nobodies, and
yeah.
It wasn't that great. For some reason, it stood out to me.
Right. Well, I think it's because Scream is such a good movie.
Yeah.
I think that really helps it.
Yeah, and it was such a big part of our life at that point.
So that was like our generation's big horror movie, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so what do you got?
Well, a couple that I want to talk about. The first one being Return of the Living Dead. That movie came out in 1985, was directed by Dan O'Bannon, who also did the screenplay for Alien. And what's cool about Return of the Living Dead, not only is it a great movie, it has an excellent soundtrack, a lot of very cool, like, Southern California punk and stuff like that. 45 Graves on there, with the Party Time song that everybody knows from that movie. The Cramps are on there with Surfin' Dead. TSOL is on there. Just a bunch of really cool bands. Some, a lot more lesser known bands, but those are probably the big three on that compilation. And there again, it's just a great movie. It's funny, it's gross. The zombies look really cool. The practical effects are outstanding.
There's boobies.
Yeah. Boobies. Yes, there is full frontal nudity.
Really?
Totally unnecessary full frontal nudity.
Incredibly unnecessary, but yeah.
But I think what's kind of interesting about that movie as a whole, the soundtrack and the movie itself, it's got these punk rockers in the movie, and then it's got this punk soundtrack. So it's kind of interesting that they actually made an effort to try and capture what was going on culturally at that time, I think, with punk rock, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's a really good one for me. I like that a lot. I mean, I love the Cramps, and now thinking back on it, it didn't even really occur to me that was the first time I ever heard the Cramps. I was watching this movie as a kid, and then I didn't really start listening to them until probably, maybe I was like late teens, somewhere in there. Probably it was when I really actually started to listen to them. But now in retrospect, that was the first time I heard them, was as a kid watching Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. The seed was planted. Put it that way.
Yeah, that is interesting. The first time I ever heard of the Cramps was watching Gleaming the Cube. Deep cut.
Nice. Yeah,
Not a horror movie, but a deep cut.
No,
I need to watch that soon.
Okay. So I think that's a really cool movie. Just for everything that's going on in it culturally, as well as just it being a great horror movie, great soundtrack. The next one I want to talk about, not such a great movie, but had an excellent soundtrack in my opinion, was Dracula 2000.
Yes.
Now, I'll be honest with you, I saw this movie once in the theater, never watched it ever again after that, and honestly, I don't remember anything about it. But
Fake fan.
but the soundtrack is fantastic. And here's a true Josh confession. I like a lot of nu metal. I was trying to keep that hidden for a long time, but now I'm old and I just really don't care what other people think. Care. So, guess what? I like a lot of nu metal, and this one has some really good cuts on it. In particular, I really like System of a Down's cover of Metro by Berlin. I think that was a great 80s kind of like synth poppy song, and then they took it and really System of a Downed it up, and it sounds really cool that way.
Yeah.
And I like it when bands do covers. I like it when they make the cover their own, and I think System of a Down really pulled that off. That song has been stuck in my head ever since Dracula 2000, and I bought that soundtrack. It's also notable for having Pantera's last recorded song, which is called Avoid the Light. That's on there. And there's also a Slayer song on there that's really cool called Bloodline, which was on the album God Hates Us All, which was unfortunately released on September 11th. But
great album though.
But it is a really good Slayer album.
Yeah.
Some people don't like those later Slayer albums, but I think it's really good. So yeah, I think that one's a really memorable soundtrack too. And what's interesting with that is I think that, there are some not so great songs on. There's kind of some throwaway nu metal songs on there, like Endo and Flybanger, I think, is on there. Nobody even has heard of those bands anymore.
Static X.
Oh, Static X is on there, right? Seagull and Dead's on there. That's a great song. So I think that what's interesting about that one is it's a case of, in my opinion, it's a soundtrack that sort of outshined and outlived the actual movie that it was, accompanying, because people still talk about, a lot of those bands. Some of them still are around and still out playing and making new albums and stuff. But does anybody talk about Dracula 2000 as a movie? No.
This does not mean that when you go to a used CD store, you will not see 40 copies of this in the $1.99 bin of this album.
Well, that's the other thing is, like, everybody bought that soundtrack.
Yeah.
And then, nu metal fell out of fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So, so a lot of people, I don't have my copy of it anymore either, but,
Mine got too scratched up. I had to throw it away.
But I listened to it a lot when I had it, by golly.
Yes. The other ones that just quick mention is Lost Boys, because we have to discuss
Tim Capello, the sexy sax man.
Woo!
Good Lord, that man. What's interesting about Tim Capello, I should say, I don't know if it's interesting, but it's funny, is when I was, a long time ago, I had watched Lost Boys for the however many millionth time, and I was like, who is this guy? Because I never really looked, that part's really memorable, but I never looked, who is this guy that's not the sexy sax man? So I started to look, went down an internet rabbit hole. His name's Tim Capello. He's known for, he was Tina Turner's saxophone player at one time. And I thought what was funny about his Wikipedia entry was it even says in there he's known for his gyrating.
Wow. He does. He's got some hips.
He does, right?
Shakira would be.
That's right. His hips
jealous.
don't lie either.
Yeah. But the one song on there, I think, is "Cry Little Sister."
Oh yeah, absolutely, fantastic song.
It's such a weird, spooky song. And Marilyn Manson covered it just a few years ago, and I think it was actually for a video game or something.
Oh, really?
But he did such a good job of it, and he didn't mess it up or anything like that. You really, except he didn't include the little weird cry.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Which I think was a smart choice.
Yeah, it was. You don't want to copy that.
No, we don't need that.
And then the last one that we want to talk about is most recent stuff is Jordan Peele, which we love his movies.
Yes, absolutely.
The soundtracks that this man comes up with is pretty amazing. The first one, it wasn't much of a soundtrack. It was more of a score, and it was for Get Out. But there is a song on there, the beginning song that you hear at the opening of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I can't pronounce it. I'm not going to try to say it. I'll put a link that explains, because I don't want to sound like an idiot or to offend anybody because I don't know the information about the tribe that actually sang this or anything like that.
But it is an African song.
It is an African song. It is in another language, and it's fascinating. And it really set a mood for the movie, and I still love this song very much. I did go and look up what it actually says, and anyway, we'll put a link in there so you could see what we're referring to.
Super ominous sounding song too, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, if you haven't heard it, you go watch that movie if you haven't, because it's great. But yeah, just a super ominous sounding song to kind of set the tone of that movie.
Well, and they are saying "run"
Yeah.
over and over again in it, but he just does a good job with soundtracks and scores.
Yes, absolutely.
He knows how to set a tone, especially for movies. Yeah. So anyway, that's it. We're pretty much wrapping it up with that one.
Yeah.
We know we did not discuss Italian horror and their soundtracks and their music. That will be at a later time.
Yes.
Because that is an episode in itself.
Oh, absolutely.
And it deserves an entire episode.
Absolutely.
So if there's other songs or movies, soundtracks, anything like that you want us to know about or you want to discuss, we'll be more than happy to discuss them, because it's always interesting to hear other people's opinions of these things.
Yeah.
And to be open to something else. So don't forget to go and look for that link to the Spotify playlist that we worked so very hard for about 5 minutes to create for you. It's something we have all these songs liked already on our own stuff, so it was very easy to just send it over to a new playlist. But they are fun to listen to, and especially during this time of year when it's just everything's cheery and happy.
Yes.
Then you can listen to this and go, it's not so great. And you don't have to listen to Christmas music.
That's right. But yeah, anyways, I just want to say thanks to everybody who has watched or listened, and everybody who has subscribed. If you have not subscribed, please do so. It helps us out immensely if you will subscribe to our channel. We would greatly appreciate it. If you like our videos, be sure to give them a like, leave a comment, share your story. What soundtracks have you appreciated over the years of watching horror movies? What movies did you like the soundtrack better than the movie? Let us know in the comments, by all means.
And please share the links to your friends and family on Facebook. It's one of the easiest things to do. And so we can get more followers and spread the word on all the great stuff that we have to say.
Yes, absolutely.
So until next week.
Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Bye. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Whee!
Yay!